Hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to present the view on the Nordic life sciences, but I don't know how much smart I can say after two professors with Niklas and Jonathan who have presented already, but let me try. Maybe some words at the beginning, what we do at Bayer. We have essentially three different areas in business, and this is very much about the health of organisms, whether it's human health, and we are talking here very much about prescription drugs, over-the-counter drugs, or whether it's the health of plants, so everything what the farmers need on their fields in terms of insecticides, fungicides, herbicides, whatever that is, as well as finally the health of animals. Here we have a companion animal, but we are at the same time also in food animal, and I'm specifically saying that the dog here is not considered as food in our perspective. It's just that we are in both fields of this operation. Why are we in these life science fields, as we say so? We very much believe that there's a couple of global challenges right now with a growing population from 7 to 9 billion people. There is resource scarcity because there's potentially not enough food production in the future. And at the same time, there is a growing demand and need for healthy food. And with all these businesses we are in, we feel we are exactly tackling those challenges and at the same time providing solutions here. When we think about the Nordics, I would guess this almost applies for any big corporation. It's not that much that we focus on single countries, and the reason is very simple. I mean, when you go via the countries we have in the Nordics, whether it's Finland with around 5 million people, whether it's Sweden with almost 10 million, whether it's Norway with around 5, or Denmark with almost 6, and then finally the Baltics with 6, any of these markets is too small to be really attractive in terms of selling and launching products if you don't consider that all as a region. And I think that is pretty much what we need to do from a government perspective, from a business perspective, but also from a business development and innovation perspective, to see that much more as one country group, as most of the businesses do. And actually, when you do that, you're talking about suddenly a market of 30 million people and a GDP combined of 1.7 trillion US dollars. When you compare that with a number of other markets in Europe, you can see that we are talking almost about the size of Spain or Canada, and that brings it to a totally different dimension. So in terms of individual markets, probably the Nordics is not necessarily the future when you just focus on those, but if you focus on that as one region, then definitely it becomes an interesting place. When we look as a second step beside the markets now on the industry, life sciences and healthcare and specifics, there's a couple of challenges and trends, we would call them, out there in the industry. And a couple of those have been mentioned today already by Jonathan and other speakers as well. First, I would like to mention this emphasis on economic outcomes. What we mean with that is the times are over where you can just gradually innovate or improve drugs and solutions. There needs to be a major improvement, because otherwise it's very simple. You won't get reimbursement, you won't get any payments from the social systems. So there's a growing trend on economic outcomes. As a second trend, what we see, and that is luckily the stream of all the presentations you have seen so far, is personalized medicine. And I don't think that I need to go in detail here. But there's a clear shift from blockbuster drugs, like we knew them in the past, to really personalized medicine for smaller patient groups, but then very effective. And Jonathan was talking about that in very detail. The third trend we see is collaboration, and that's one of the topics which is very close to my heart. There's hardly any big player nowadays out there who is really able to do research and development of drugs and any innovative solutions just with internal resources. It's very much about collaborations, whether it's with startups like you guys, whether it's with the academia, whether it's with small and medium-sized enterprises, or any other research institute out there, including academia. So it's very much about collaboration with the different players in the ecosystem, and that is also why the ecosystem is so important, and I will come to that in a minute. The next trend we see is globalization. That's a very generic thing, but overall what we mean with that is there is growing demand, of course, in the emerging markets, and that demand is not necessarily the same one like we see in the mature markets in the Western world, be it Europe or be it the US. So we need to apply to those ones as well. And the last one I would like to mention is the IT adoption to healthcare. So there's a lot of technology which is now coming from players which didn't used to be in the healthcare field, like we see with Google and other players, which is suddenly adopted in the healthcare field, and with that also determining the future of that industry sector overall. And in summary, what we see as the major trend is you need to be either on the cost side or you need to be on the innovation side in order to survive this game on a mid to long-term run. On the cost side, we are very much talking about generic companies being very cost efficient. And on the innovative side, we are talking about some of the big players. But as you can see on that chart here from Goldman Sachs, we're not talking about all players right now in the field, but we are talking about some. And it's very much a decision you need to take from a leadership perspective, whether you go for one or the other. But if you decide for innovation, then the question, of course, is what are the most interesting innovation ecosystems out there in order to get this thing going? And the Nordics, as we can see here on that slide from the OECD, where they compile that, is probably a very interesting place to be, because the Nordic countries are very much up in the right corner. So we spend in relative terms a lot of R&D money in percentage of GDP, and we educate a lot of researchers in order to be in the labor market for innovation and research and development. At the same time, and that is probably a consequence of that, we have very interesting incubation places in the Nordic countries, whether it's the Karolinska environment in Sweden, the Medican Valley in Denmark, some places here in Finland, the Oslo Cancer Cluster in Norway. So there's an interesting buzz already for years here in the Nordic countries. When you look at the ecosystems, there's a couple of components you see, which are very specific for the Nordics. I think IT competence, I don't need to say that here on Slush. It's the biobanks, it's companies, academia, startups, the digital health systems, which are very specific for the Nordics. So there's a lot of good stuff already in the ecosystem, which is necessary to generate the innovation. At the same time, and I think for that, Slush is also a great place and a great institution. Funding is a major problem, as you know, for many startups, whether it's growth funding via venture capitalists or whether it's growth funding also by public institutions. When we look at the Nordics as an ecosystem, we very much believe that more collaboration is necessary. And here we are not talking just about collaboration within a certain economy, but rather coming back to this Nordic idea, collaboration across the Nordic countries, across the incubators, which we just have seen on the slide, and collaboration between the different players, as you can see here on that slide as well. So right now we are not perfectly working together, but in order to have a really prospering innovation ecosystem, the players definitely need to work. We need to have information exchange, innovation exchange between academia, between the startups, between the industry, in order to fund the innovation, in order to commercialize the innovation, and in order to find the innovation in the first place. So, focusing at the Nordics, what we see from a buyer perspective are three assets which are very special in the combination. And that is very much the biobanks we see here. It's the digital health system, so e-patient records, e-prescription, this whole digital health system which is available. And last but not least, the IT competence, which we have from heritages like Nokia in the past and other places, which in combination provide a very unique innovation ecosystem, where we hope that if you combine all these three, which is not something in that combination, it is existing elsewhere, will generate a lot of new innovation and new companies to grow around that ecosystem. So for startups, I think that is an excellent field of starting up new companies which are either dealing with the genetic analysis, with big data analysis, and providing solutions to big industries in order to get this collaboration up and running. Collaboration is not something we just talk about, and I just wanted to show, without going into detail, some of the deal flow we have done in the last 2 years just here in the Nordics. And this goes really from companies like Algeta, where we are talking about an acquisition value of a bit more than 2 billion euros, via collaborations with big national players like Orion Pharma, to collaborations with startups like Sprint Bioscience in Sweden, or with universities like the Biobank here in Turku. So collaboration with different players is key for us. I mentioned that several times. And I don't want to close the presentation without giving at least the last glimpse of opportunities for startups and different players to get in touch with us for collaboration. And we have different programs. Grant for Targets is very much on targets. Grant for Apps, this is a grant program for app programming and so on. So you will find those ones in the internet if you're interested. That is definitely a solution also to get in touch with us for collaboration. Thank you very much for your attention, and I wish you still a very nice Slush event during the last couple of hours. Thank you very much.